You know, in all my cycles serving the Galactic Council, I never thought I'd witness something so typically human. But here I am, Korthak the Wise, floating in my observation pod above the third moon of Valoran Prime, watching what might be the most beautifully stubborn display of defiance I've ever seen. Let me back up. 3 solar rotations ago, I received a distress beacon. Now, distress beacons are as common as space dust in this sector, usually some merchant who took a wrong turn or a mining crew that got too greedy with an unstable asteroid. Nothing worth my attention, really. But this one was different. It wasn't screaming for help, it was whispering. The signal originated from the forbidden zone around Valoran Prime. You see, the Valorans are what we diplomatically call traditional. What we actually mean is they're stuck up, pompous, and about as flexible as a neutron star. Their society runs on bloodlines, honor codes, and enough ceremony to make a Regelian funeral look casual. Princess Lyara Velthorn was supposed to marry Duke Zeref of the Northern Territories. A political alliance, naturally. The kind of arrangement that keeps the peace between the noble houses and maintains the delicate balance of power that the Valorans worship more than their 3 sons. Except Princess Lyra had other plans. And by other plans, I mean she told the entire royal court exactly where they could shove their political marriage during the betrothal ceremony. In front of 17 noble houses, the galactic media, and roughly 500 million viewers across the system. The exact quote, according to my sources, was something like, "I'd rather mate with a Zephyrian slug than spend one moment as that pompous fool's political trophy." Now you have to understand, Valorans don't do public embarrassment. Their culture is built on maintaining face, honor, and the illusion that their ruling class is somehow divinely ordained. When Princess Lyra decided to air the royal family's dirty laundry in high definition, she didn't just break tradition. She took a plasma cannon to it. King Aldrich's response was swift and, frankly, predictable. Within an hour, Princess Lyra was stripped of her titles, her inheritance, and her citizenship. They didn't just exile her, they erased her. According to Valoran law, she had never existed. But here's where it gets interesting. Because while the Valorans were busy pretending their daughter had never been born, someone else was paying attention. Someone who didn't particularly care about royal protocols or noble bloodlines. Captain Marcus Kane of the Earth vessel Wandering Star. I'd heard of Kane before. Human traders have a reputation in this sector, mostly for being unpredictably helpful and annoyingly persistent. Kane fit the profile perfectly. Mid-30s scruffy beard, the kind of grin that suggested he found the universe's problems personally amusing. He'd been running salvage and rescue operations for the better part of a decade, picking up the pieces that civilized society preferred to ignore. When Kane received Lyra's distress signal, he didn't hesitate. Didn't check the political ramifications, didn't calculate the potential profit, didn't even bother to research Valoran customs. He just pointed his ship toward the third moon and went to work. Now, I should mention that the third moon of Valoran Prime isn't exactly a vacation destination. It's a barren rock with an atmosphere you wouldn't want to breathe and temperatures that swing between uncomfortably cold and freeze your circuits solid. The Valorans use it as a dumping ground for industrial waste and broken dreams. It took Kane 6 hours to locate Lyra. She'd managed to crash-land her escape pod in a canyon that provided some shelter from the wind, but her life support was failing, her emergency rations were gone, and she was approximately 12 hours away from becoming a very attractive ice sculpture. When Kane's shuttle touched down, he found her sitting beside the wreckage of her pod, still wearing her formal court dress. She wasn't crying, wasn't panicking, wasn't even shivering despite the sub-zero temperatures. She was just waiting. "You lost," Kane called out as he approached, his breath forming clouds in the thin air. Lyra looked up at him with those distinctive Valoran silver eyes. "Not lost," she replied, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "Abandoned." Kane nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Well, abandoned, just lost with style. You coming, or are you planning to redecorate this place?" And that's when I knew I was watching something special. Because Lyra smiled, Not the polite, practiced smile of a royal princess, but a genuine expression of amusement. Here she was, cast out by her own family, dying alone on a frozen moon, and she was laughing at a human's terrible joke. "I suppose I could come along," she said, accepting Kane's offered hand. "Though I should warn you, I'm currently persona non grata in most civilized systems." "Lucky for you, I specialize in uncivilized ones," Kane replied, helping her to her feet. As they made their way back to Kane's shuttle, Lyra explained her situation. The forced marriage, the public rejection, the exile. Kane listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "So let me get this straight," he said finally. "Your family tried to sell you off to some duke you'd never met, and when you refused, they threw you away like yesterday's garbage." "That's a rather crude but accurate summary, yes." Kane shook his head. "And they call themselves civilized." "You hungry?" The question caught her off guard. "I'm sorry." "Hungry." "When's the last time you ate?" 2 days ago, I think." "Right, we'll fix that first, then figure out what comes next." And that, my friends, is where this story gets truly interesting. Because what came next wasn't what anyone expected. Over the following days, as Kane's ship made its way through the outer systems, Lyra began to understand what she'd gotten herself into. The Wandering Star wasn't just a salvage vessel, it was a mobile rescue operation. Kane had a crew of 12, all refugees from various conflicts and disasters. There was Petra, a former weapons engineer whose homeworld had been glassed in a corporate war. Singh, a medic who'd been blacklisted for treating the wrong side in a colonial uprising. Marco, a pilot whose crime was being born on the wrong planet when the borders shifted. They were outcasts, every one of them. And they'd found something on Kane's ship that their original homes had never offered: purpose. "We don't save people for the money," Kane explained one evening as they sat in the ship's common area, sharing a meal of synthesized proteins and real vegetables from the hydroponics bay. "Though the money doesn't hurt, we do it because someone should." "That's wonderfully noble," Lyara said, and she meant it. "But what happens when you rescue someone who can't pay?" "Someone like me." Kane grinned, that infuriating human grin. "Then you work for your passage. Unless you're planning to be a passenger for the rest of your life." Lyra had never worked a day in her privileged existence. She'd been educated in 17 languages, trained in diplomatic protocol, and could recite the complete genealogies of all the major noble houses. She could play the crystalline harp, discuss theoretical physics, and negotiate trade agreements that would make experienced diplomats weep with envy. She had absolutely no idea how to operate a plasma cutter, repair atmospheric processors, or navigate through an asteroid field. It was, she decided, time to learn. The first few weeks were educational. Lyra discovered that royal etiquette training hadn't prepared her for the reality of manual labor. Her hands, soft from a lifetime of luxury, blistered and bled. Her back ached from bending over machinery. Her carefully maintained appearance became a distant memory as she found herself covered in engine grease and coolant fluid. She loved every minute of it. "You're smiling," Singh observed one day as Lyra struggled with a particularly stubborn coupling in the engine room. "Am I?" Lyra wiped sweat from her forehead, probably smearing more grease across her face in the process. "You've been smiling for days. It's disturbing." Lyra laughed, a sound that would have shocked her former tutors. "I've never been useful before. It's intoxicating." And it was. For the first time in her life, Lyra was contributing something real, something meaningful. She wasn't a symbol or a political asset or a carefully groomed representative of her bloodline. She was just another crew member, pulling her weight and earning her place through effort rather than birth. The crew accepted her without question or deference. They taught her their skills, shared their stories, and gradually included her in their tight-knit family. When she made mistakes, they corrected her. When she succeeded, they celebrated. When she needed help, they provided it without making her feel weak or incapable. It was, she realized, what she'd been searching for her entire life without knowing it. But the galaxy, as Kane liked to say, has a twisted sense of humor. 3 months after her rescue, as the wandering star was docked at Nexus Station for repairs and supplies, Lyra received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Theron Velkoroth, her father's younger brother and the Valoran diplomatic representative to the Galactic Council. He found her in the cargo bay, where she was helping Marco recalibrate the loading mechanisms. She was wearing coveralls, her hair tied back in a practical knot, her hands stained with lubricant. She looked nothing like the pristine princess who had walked the halls of the royal palace. Lyara, his voice carried the formal coldness of Valoran high society. She looked up from her work, and for a moment something flickered across her face. Not fear, not shame, but something harder to define. Recognition, perhaps. Or disappointment. Uncle Theron. How unexpected. She didn't stop working. The council has reached a decision regarding your situation. My situation? Lyra's tone was perfectly neutral, but I could see her hands tighten on her tools. Your exile was precipitous. The king acted in anger, without proper consideration of the political implications. The marriage alliance with Duke Zeraf is no longer viable, obviously. But there are other arrangements that could be made, other alliances that would benefit from your unique position. Lyara set down her tools and faced her uncle fully. Let me understand this correctly. Father cast me out, erased me from official records and declared me dead to Valoran society. And now, 3 months later, you want me to come home so I can be married off to a different political ally. The situation has changed. Your public rejection of the Duke has become something of a symbol among certain factions. The common people see you as someone who stood up to the nobility. With proper management, this could be turned to the Crown's advantage. And there it was. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of wrong, but a new way to use her for political gain. Lyra was quiet for a long moment, and I found myself holding my breath, waiting for her response. When she spoke, her voice was calm, measured, and absolutely final. No, no. I beg your pardon? No, I won't be returning to Valoran Prime. I won't be entering into any marriage alliances. I won't be used as a political symbol or a propaganda tool. I'm exactly where I belong. Ambassador Theron's expression shifted from diplomatic patience to barely controlled anger. You're throwing away your birthright, your heritage, your very identity for what? To play servant to a crew of common criminals and outcasts. I'm choosing my family, Lyra replied simply. And that's when Captain Kane appeared in the cargo bay doorway, his timing absolutely perfect as always. Everything okay here? He asked, his casual tone belied by the way his hand rested near his sidearm. We're fine, Lyra said, not taking her eyes off her uncle. The ambassador was just leaving. Theron looked between Lyra and Kane, his disgust evident. This isn't over, Lyra. The Crown has invested too much in you to simply let you waste away among these people. The Crown invested nothing in me, Lyra said, her voice gaining steel. You invested in an idea, a symbol, a political tool. That person never existed. I'm someone else now. As Theron stormed out of the cargo bay, Kane moved to stand beside Lyra. He didn't say anything, just offered his presence and support. Think he'll be back? Kane asked after the ambassador disappeared. Oh, he'll be back, Lyra said, picking up her tools again. But next time he won't be asking. And she was right. 2 weeks later, I was monitoring routine traffic through the Helix Nebula when my sensors picked up something that made my scales itch with concern. A Valoran battlecruiser, the Divine Retribution, had entered the sector. Alone. Now, Valoran warships don't travel solo unless they're on a very specific type of mission. The kind that doesn't appear in official records. I immediately tried to contact the Wandering Star, but Kane's ship had gone dark. Their last known position was in the asteroid mining fields of Sector 7, probably helping some unfortunate crew whose equipment had failed at the worst possible moment. Standard operating procedure for Kane's people. What wasn't standard was the 3 unmarked fighters that were closing in on their position. By the time I arrived, the party had already started. And what a party it was! The Wandering Star was locked in combat with 2 of the fighters, while the 3rd had somehow managed to disable their main engines. Kane's ship was tough, built for salvage work and reinforced for the kind of dangerous situations they routinely found themselves in, but it wasn't a warship. The Valoran fighters, on the other hand, were sleek, fast, and armed with enough firepower to turn a small asteroid into cosmic dust. I watched as Kane executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for a ship that size, using the disabled engines as a distraction, while spinning the Wandering Star around its central axis. The move caught one of the fighters off guard, and Kane's gunner, Petra, didn't waste the opportunity. Her shot took out the fighter's left wing, sending it spinning into a nearby asteroid. But the remaining fighters were adapting, working in coordination to box Kane in. It was only a matter of time before they wore down his defenses. That's when the divine retribution arrived. The battlecruiser dropped out of hyperspace like an avenging angel, its massive bulk casting shadows across the asteroid field. For a moment I thought Kane was finished. There was no way his salvage ship could stand against a full Valoran warship. Then the battlecruiser opened fire on the fighters. I'll admit I had to recalibrate my sensors twice to make sure I was seeing this correctly. A Valoran military vessel was attacking other Valoran craft. In all my years of galactic politics, I'd never seen anything quite like it. The fighters didn't stand a chance. The battlecruiser's weapons were designed to engage capital ships, not nimble fighters. It was like watching someone use a plasma cannon to swat flies, and about as effective. When the smoke cleared, Kane's ship was battered but intact, 2 fighters were space debris, and the 3rd was limping away as fast as its damaged engines could carry it. The divine retribution moved closer to the Wandering Star, and I prepared for the worst. But instead of weapons fire, I detected a communication beam. "Captain Kane," came a familiar voice over the open channel. "This is Admiral Corith Vel Thorn. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Kane's response was classic human understatement. "Depends on your definition of belongs, Admiral." "My daughter, Captain. I've come to bring her home." There was a pause before Kane replied. "With respect, Admiral, I think you should ask her about that." What followed was perhaps the most awkward family reunion in galactic history. Lyara, now looking every inch the capable spacer in her work clothes, faced her father on the view screen of Kane's ship. Admiral Corith, still in his formal military uniform, stared at his daughter with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You look different," the Admiral said finally. "I am different," Lyra replied. "I'm who I always should have been. Your mother is worried sick. The entire court is in chaos. Your uncle's diplomatic efforts have been unsuccessful." Lyra's laugh had no humor in it. "Unsuccessful? Is that what you call threatening my friends and attacking their ship?" "Those weren't my orders," Admiral Corith said, and something in his tone made me believe him. "Your uncle took matters into his own hands. The king is not pleased. And what are your orders, father?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight I hadn't expected. "To bring you home safely. To give you the choice your mother and I should have given you years ago. And if I choose to stay? Then I return alone and tell the king that Princess Lyara died in the crash of her escape pod 3 months ago, as officially recorded." Kane stepped into view of the camera. "Admiral, if I may, your daughter has become part of our crew. She's earned her place here through her own efforts. Whatever you decide, she'll always have a home with us." Admiral Corith studied Kane for a moment. "You're the human who rescued her." "I'm the human who found her. She rescued herself." The Admiral's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Indeed. Captain, would you permit me to come aboard? I'd like to speak with my daughter privately, if she's willing." An hour later, Admiral Corith materialized on the Wandering Star's transport pad. He looked around the functional, unpretentious interior of Kane's ship with obvious curiosity. This wasn't the luxurious environment he was used to. Lyra met him in the common area, still wearing her work clothes. For a moment, father and daughter just looked at each other across a gulf that seemed wider than the space between systems. "You cut your hair," the Admiral said. "Easier to maintain," Lyra replied, unconsciously touching the practical short style she'd adopted. "Your mother always said you had your grandmother's stubbornness." Grandmother was wise. Admiral Corrith smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from him. She was. She also told me once that traditions serve people, not the other way around. I should have remembered that. They talked for hours. About the forced marriage, about the exile, about the life Lyra had built for herself among Kane's crew. The Admiral listened without judgment, asked questions without accusations, and gradually began to understand what his daughter had become. "You're happy," he said eventually. It wasn't a question. "I'm useful. I'm valued for what I contribute, not what I represent. I'm free to make my own choices, even the wrong ones. And you choose this life?" Lyra looked around the common area, where her crewmates were giving them privacy while continuing their normal routines. Petra was teaching Singh a card game that involved more cheating than skill. Marco was arguing with the ship's AI about optimal flight paths. Kane was quietly reviewing maintenance reports, ready to step in if needed but respecting the family moment. "I choose this family," she said. Admiral Corrith nodded slowly. "Then I have a proposition for you." What he proposed was unprecedented in Valoran history. A new role, created specifically for Lyra, ambassador to the independent systems, with the mandate to assist refugees, outcasts, and those who fell through the cracks of galactic civilization. She would represent Valoran interests, but her primary mission would be humanitarian aid and rescue operations. The position would come with official backing, funding, and legal protection for your operations, the Admiral explained. You would report directly to the Crown, but your methods would be entirely your own discretion. Kane whistled softly. "That's a hell of an offer." "It's politics," Lyra said suspiciously. "Another way to use me for the Crown's benefit." Perhaps, her father admitted, but it would also legitimize the work you're already doing. How many more people could you help with official support instead of operating on the margins? It was a tempting offer, and Lyra was clearly torn. She looked to Kane, who shrugged in his typically unhelpful way. "Your choice," he said. "Whatever you decide, you'll always have a berth on this ship." "But," Lyra prompted, hearing something in his tone. Kane grinned. "But if you take the job, I might just have to apply for a position as your chief of security. Someone's got to keep you out of trouble." Petra looked up from her card game. "Does this mean we get to shoot people legally now?" "Only the bad people," Lyra said, surprising herself by already thinking in terms of accepting the position. Finally, Singh muttered, "I was getting tired of patching up bullet wounds without proper legal backing." Admiral Corrith watched the byplay with fascination. This wasn't how Valoran nobility typically made decisions. There were no formal consultations, no committee meetings, no careful analysis of political ramifications. Just a group of people who trusted each other enough to leap into the unknown together. "There would be conditions," Lyra said finally. "Name them." "My crew comes with me." All of them. No questions about their pasts, no background checks, no security clearances. "They are my family, and I won't abandon them for political convenience." "Agreed." "My methods are my own. I won't be micromanaged by bureaucrats who've never left their offices." "Understood." "And if the Crown ever tries to use this position for anything other than genuine humanitarian purposes, I walk away. Permanently." Admiral Corrith extended his hand. "You have my word." Lyra shook it, sealing a deal that would reshape how the Valoran Empire dealt with the galaxy's forgotten people. 6 months later, I watched as the newly commissioned vessel Second Chance dropped out of hyperspace above a disaster zone in the Outer Rim. The ship was twice the size of Kane's old salvage vessel, equipped with state-of-the-art medical facilities, expanded cargo holds, and enough defensive armament to discourage pirates and raiders. Ambassador Lyara Thorn, official representative of the Valoran crown and unofficial patron saint of lost causes, stood on the bridge wearing practical work clothes and a satisfied smile. Her crew, now expanded to 30 volunteers from a dozen different species, moved with the practiced efficiency of people who'd found their calling. "All right, people," Kane's voice came over the comm system from his position at the security station. "We've got 400 refugees, limited supplies, and hostile forces en route. You know the drill." "Standard Tuesday," then Petra replied from the weapons console. "Standard Tuesday," Lyra agreed, settling into the captain's chair she'd never wanted but had grown into perfectly. As I watched them work, coordinating the evacuation with military precision and genuine compassion, I reflected on the strange ways the universe arranges itself. A princess who was cast out for refusing to be a political pawn had become one of the most effective diplomatic assets in the galaxy. A human salvage captain had found himself at the head of an officially sanctioned rescue operation. A group of outcasts and refugees had become the standard by which humanitarian missions were measured. The Valorans still didn't entirely understand what they'd created when they gave Lyra her freedom and resources. They thought they were gaining a useful diplomatic tool. What they actually got was something far more dangerous and valuable, a conscience. And as for Lyra herself, she'd found what every exile dreams of and few ever achieve. She'd built a home not from the ashes of what she'd lost, but from the foundation of what she'd chosen to become. The rescue operation proceeded flawlessly, as they always did under Lyra's command. 400 refugees were safely evacuated before the hostile forces arrived. Another victory for the outcasts, another day's work for the crew of the Second Chance. Just another standard Tuesday in the life of a princess who chose her own crown. And me? I'm still watching, still recording, still amazed by the capacity of humans to take impossible situations and somehow make them work. Because if there's one thing I've learned in all my cycles of observation, it's this: never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose and everything left to prove. Especially if they're human. Or human-trained. The universe is a vast, complicated place full of ancient grudges, impossible politics, and species that can't agree on basic concepts like justice or freedom. But sometimes, just sometimes, someone comes along who cuts through all the complexity with the simple, radical idea that people matter more than politics. Princess Lyara Thorn was cast out by her own people for refusing to be a bargaining chip. She was found dying and alone by a human who specialized in impossible rescues. Together, they built something that shouldn't work according to any known model of governance or diplomacy. It works anyway. And that, my friends, is the most human thing of all.